today as we welcome in Cam Robinson, the director of everything at Elite Prospects. Say hello to Patrick. I know you. It's the Get Along guys.
Hey, buddy.
What's up, Pete? How you doing, big guy?
Hi. I'm back from Mexico.
These are like
feeling
besties here.
Feeling great. Oh, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh,
We have lots. I don't
we go
see the
way
set.
back.
How often do you guys chat?
Well, we haven't chatted in a while. Here's partly what's happened is that because the kids are both in school now, I don't have this half-hour walk home from daycare where I used to call some various people, and Cam was on my list of people that I would call while I would walk and say, "What are you hearing? What are you thinking?" And
I miss the calls. I miss them.
I'll bring them back.
There we go. Please do.
Our first opportunity to talk to you, my friend, since Friday in the big Quinn Hughes trade. Give me your assessment, your report card.
Oh boy, I wasn't prepared. I thought we'd be talking all about the Max Sasson extension.
He is on the list.
Okay, wonderful. Yes. Oh boy. Hey, I was trying to play catch up there. I was on the ice coaching my daughter's U7 team, and so I stepped off, and there's no cell service in the rink, and I was about 40 minutes behind, and I had to. I saw you were texting me there, Matt, and I had a whole bunch of people asking, "Can Ugrin play center? What's going on?" I was like, "Oh boy, I think I missed something big here." So yeah, I mean, it's been talked about ad nauseum. You know, you don't win a trade when you lose the best player in the deal, and doubly so when you lose arguably the greatest player in franchise history. But as far as the return goes, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a better one in this situation, especially knowing that it's a year and a half for Quinn Hughes and not a 7-year extension tied in with it. And then you could have really gone for the moon. I think the deal hinges almost entirely on Zeve Buium, how he develops. Now, personally, I love Zeve Buium. I've been able to see him live sporadically over the last 3 seasons. He's a stud. He's an absolute stud. He should develop into, that workhorse number one defenseman for you. Obviously, best case scenario there, but, he has explosive skating. I've always loved, he's a shifty downhill mover where he can make guys miss coming down from the point. He activates intelligently. And I think his defensive game, it's been burgeoning. He's a confident kid. He wants to be on the ice in high pressure moments. He wants to play 30 minutes a night. I've talked to David Carl, like his time at Denver. He didn't come into that program even being projected as a first-round pick. And then all of a sudden, he developed into their top defenseman. They won a national champion. He was won everything. So it's the deal hinges on him. And the other pieces are just like you hope that you get some good stuff there as well. But it all comes down to Zeve.
It's funny. I didn't realize till yesterday he's a serial winner. I mean, it's maybe not Thomas Mueller just yet, but 2 natties at Denver, 2 World Junior goals, a World Championship as well. Okay.
U18, I believe. Yeah.
So I talked to a scout on Friday who thought the upside on Buium could be someone like Josh Morrissey or Jackson Lacombe, a no doubt top pair defenseman who drives a lot of offense, but is also good enough defensively to hold down those heavy minutes. He thought, like, if things went very poorly for him, at the very least, you're looking at a Shane Gostisbehere type of defenseman who brings you a lot of points, even if he isn't necessarily an every situation top minutes type guy. And he thought the middle ground was something around a Morgan Riley type player, West Vancouver. And Morgan's been an outstanding player for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I saw you good Twitter debate last night between yourself and Mr. Drance. Give me the high end, give me the mid ground, give me the sort of low end on Buium as he develops here.
Yeah, Thomas and I, we're just having some fun there, and people are jumping in too. But as a middle ground, a Morgan Riley, I think is fair. I think that if that's an average outcome where things didn't go totally well, like you said, Riley's had a great career. For spurts has been, a pretty high end offensive guy and just kind of maybe lacking a little bit on the defensive side of things. I do see more in that Josh Morrissey, Zach Werenski type level. He's such a great skater. He's so poised. And I think he has that compete level that that the defense is going to come along with him. And I don't know if you guys remember Josh Morrissey wasn't an elite defender early in his career either. He had to build it up, as most of these guys do. And so you point at a 20-year-old, a recently turned 20-year-old, and be like, the defense is lacking at the NHL level. Well, it's like he's the same draft class as, Sam Dickinson and Zane Parekh and all these guys that are also trying to find their way in the NHL and are struggling. He's ahead of them already too. So I think he has that true number one defensive upside. And then, maybe if, you don't quite hit it, you're a good 2 on that top pairing and a top power play guy. Personally, I think he's, arguably better than Shane Gostisbehere is already as an all-around player. Maybe that's a bit of a hyperbole just because Goss is a long-term vet, but I do think the upside is much, much higher. And that's what makes me so excited for this deal. There was all those kind of talked about trade packages coming out of Detroit or Philadelphia or, even Carolina with Nikishin. I think they did the best that they could possibly do outside of the Islanders weren't giving up Matty Schaefer. But if we're talking about young 20 and under defensemen, there's not many I would take over Zeve Buium.
I found myself thinking back to the 2022 draft where you and I broke that and the debate, for the Canucks at 15, the sort of Lekkerimaki Ogren debate, and now he's here, and we only see 3 goals in the NHL. What do you make of where he's at? Could he? I mean, is this a repeat of Lukas Reichel, or could he be more than that?
Oh, yeah. I think apples and oranges for Lukas Reichel. So, at the time I had him 8th on my board and I had Lekkerimaki, I think, 15 or 16 or something like that. And, from my understanding, there were some NHL teams, including Minnesota, that had Ugren very, very high up in their board, potentially even the top 10. So when they got him outside of the top 15 or wherever they ended up snagging him, I think that felt like a win. And, I still feel like long term that take of mine is going to age well, that I think he's going to be a more impactful player than Jonathan Lekkerimaki. Lekkerimaki has that one-shot goal scoring ability that is so rare that's what you want, and that's what he needs to bring to be effective. Where Ugren, he's not a burner, but he builds speed through like this really he's this powerful stride. He's almost like angry at the ice when he skates. Like he's really digging in and driving through it. He gets pucks to the net and he shields really well and protects them really well. He can be a high intensity forechecker. He's a leader. He plays heavy. He has a strong defensive game built in. So, maybe I oversold his offensive upside just a hair in his draft year. And maybe now the projection is more like that middle 6 play driving guy with upside of 45 to 60 points, kind of in that range. And then, if it doesn't work out, then he's going to be a bottom 6 guy who can bring all those elements as well. And now you nudge down that point projection into that 30 to 45 point range. But I think they're going to really appreciate the player and the quality of person, the leader, just a hard worker. I think he's going to have a long NHL career.
It's interesting here you mentioned leader, because that's actually something that came up when I was talking to Jim Rutherford yesterday. It was that he talked about how all 3 of these guys, I mean, we heard coming in, these are good dudes, like in terms of sort of media terms, but like he brought up, we need good character guys. All 3 of these guys are quality character people. Like that's really important to us. I think we know that with a guy like Verlander or whatever, but like to bring those guys in and just sort of reset the group clearly is part of the project here, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, I forget if it was Jason there who asked it, that said, is there a culture issue in Vancouver?
Yeah.
And it was kind of scoffed at, where it's like, well, I mean, look back at everything that's happened. It's hard to really argue. So yes, bringing in 3 guys that are highly competitive, they want to get better. They take pride in both sides of the puck, playing on both sides of the puck. Marco Rossi, he, not the biggest player, but you're hard pressed to find someone who works as hard as he does and takes as much pride in his game. And then also has the high end hockey sense, the strong puck protection, the great speed, dangerous playmaker. You put him with good players, he's going to produce too. But, everyone I've spoken to right back to his draft year, and then, in Minnesota as well, is like a consummate pro, like first to the rink, last to the rink, takes every rep as an opportunity to get better. Even as a 23, 24-year-old in the NHL is still pushing the envelope every season to get better. And then, even looking at his past where he lost a whole season due to COVID, where there was moments where he didn't think he was going to make it. He thought he was going to die and or let alone get back to playing hockey. So he's gone through some things, and I think that perspective is going to only, contribute further to him becoming a very real asset for the Canucks.
On Ogren, Cam, or Ugren, if that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
So the 7 points in 47 NHL games, the 3 goals, he's dipped toe in 3 seasons now in the NHL. At what point would you start to get concerned that there's just not enough bottom line and he's sort of blending into the sea of Granlunds? How much runway does he have left here?
I think there's still plenty of runway. He's 3 years post-draft. Hasn't seen much opportunity at the NHL level to play with good players. In Minnesota, he was seeing between, 6 and 9 minutes a night on the fourth line. defensive zone draws. Like he wasn't put in positions to succeed where, a Lekkerimaki, when he gets brought up, it's like, well, you better play him in the top 6 because that's where he's going to be useful. Ugrin's going to be able to fill, spots throughout your lineup, but I don't think we can really judge his offensive upside until you put him in positions to succeed. His AHL numbers have been strong. His numbers back in Sweden were always strong, internationally, the junior level, the SHL. He's when you give him a chance, he can make things happen. But that said, it's like you shouldn't expect him to break out and become a 75-point scorer. I don't think that that's likely at this point. You never want to put a glass ceiling on a young player, but I think that the Canucks probably were pretty familiar with his game when they were watching Djurgården, when they were scouting and trying to make that decision in 2022. And so I'm sure they had a really big book on him and good buddies with Lekkerimaki too. So bringing those two, that familiarity there as well.
Would a stint in Abbotsford be the worst thing?
No, absolutely not. He's 21. I think that would just be fine to go back down there and play first line minutes or top 6 minutes and kind of flesh out the system that they want to play here in Vancouver and then come on back up. I think we'll be looking at, judging him and his true upside here in the next year and a half sort of thing, is that if he's not able to really start to find the back of the net and put up points in 26, 27, then you're like, okay, we're probably looking at a depreciating asset.
Had a scout tell me on Rossi, say, look, he's a second-line center, but he's not a second-line center like Bo Horvat or Ryan Kessler were second-line centers. 5'9", 170 or 180, 182 pounds. Cam, is he a bona fide second-line center on a contending team, or on a contending team is he pushed down the lineup or he plays the wing because of his size?
And I've said this before when it was rumored that the Canucks were interested in bringing him in, and we found out later what that ask was, and we'd heard it was a first plus of top prospect, is that I do believe that he is a bona fide number 2 center. Just ideally you would have him behind a heavy number 1. So if you have him behind Sasha Barkov, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. That's not too bad. You have him behind Elias Pettersson, who doesn't play a heavy game and is also a little slight, a little under physicality there. The weight isn't behind him. Then it's like, you better have a real heavy third line center in that regard to play that matchup role. But I do, he just turned 24 years old. He already has a 25 goal, 60-point season under his belt. And then full year this year, he's on pace to break that as well. He's missed a little bit of time. I think that he could, I said the whole deal hinges on Buium, but I think that people maybe are forgetting that this kid is still developing, and is that we could see a player that pushes into that 70, 75, 80 point realm if you surrounded him with good players. Now, the issue in Vancouver is that the good players will end up playing with Pettersson. They don't have enough to spread it around. But in 3 years, maybe could you see a Gavin McKenna on his wing looking pretty good? That could be a lot of fun. An Ivar Stenberg, something like that. Maybe they could find that chemistry and build together long term. I think that the upside is still growing with Rossi, and I do believe that he's a true number 2 center. It's just in this situation, it's not ideal because Pettersson's your 1.
So what do you think? What do you think happens next now? I mean, there's been all the talk about Sherwood. I was talking to someone, and they're like, I don't know. I might now want to actually think about keeping Sherwood. That really the focus should be getting off Kane, getting that sort of player off your roster, because he blocks. Not only does he sort of take up space from a guy like Ugrin, but there's also just the kind of player he is. We've talked about character and just what he does or doesn't bring to that room, and that might be something you want to get away from your kids.
Can't we do both? Can't Patrick Alvin shouldn't be that busy anymore, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
it's
maybe
that
what he's been busy on.
Maybe too busy to make the biggest trade in franchise history. That was certainly noteworthy when Jim Rutherford mentioned that, but
almost like it was a euphemism for Jimmy's taking back control here. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. I think you absolutely move Sherwood. You have culture carriers under contract already, and Connor Garland and Tyler Myers and guys like that. They kind of probably missed their window when he was red hot, if you wanted to sell him early and try to really capitalize on that. But I think it'll be just fine as long as he can find his game and at least play average production wise anyways, leading up to the deadline, because, prices end up getting nudged up as they get closer to him because he's such a unique profile with the way he can play physical too. So you got to come out of something with, like a first round pick or, a second and a decent prospect, or, a young U23 roster player that you feel good about. Kane, sure, get him off the books, however you can do that. Basically, you want this team to be all under 30. And, some other things that are just floating around in my head as I've been thinking about this all week is that, when Rutherford said, or Alvin said that, they had an indication from Quinn, a year and a half ago that it was unlikely he was going to sign. And so, I love how they wouldn't say the word rebuild. And then all of a sudden they're like, this will help with our rebuild that we've been doing now for so long. Well, if they knew or had a good idea that Quinn wasn't coming back, it's like, why did they take that first that they got in the Miller trade and immediately flip it for Marcus Pettersson? Yeah. Why did they go out and get Evander Kane? Why did they sign Kevin Lankinen when they could have been like, we got Artur Silovs here. He's young and he has upside. All these things are just coming into my mind, which concern me for where the direction will be going now. And when you bring up like maybe they keep Sherwood, it's like, no, they should probably move off of him, and they should probably be exploring moving off of Connor Garland too. Like the guys that you're probably not going to get rid of are Pettersson because his contract, and Besser because you just signed him. And I think that that's a culture carrier that you can keep around long term.
Did you have something further?
I was just going to say on the 30-year-old note, it is worth noting that you're right. Myers, Kane, 35, 34 coming into the season. Myers turns 36 in February, but, Kampf, Lankinen, Sherwood, that just turned 30. You got Pettersson and Garland turning 30 next year. They're very close to, as you said, skewing towards that younger roster that they really say they want to have.
Yeah. I think there are complications with an Evander Kane trade. I believe NHL teams have a question about something from Evander's most recent past in Edmonton. I believe I'm workshopping something that I'm going to get to in the coming days, gentlemen. Cam, we'll ask you about it next Tuesday. We'll ask you about it on your hit next week. So we'll save no more there just because I got a number of other topics I want to get to with Cam. Okay. Buddy, this Minnesota first-round pick, as it stands right here, right now, would be number 27 overall in the NHL draft. Now, could get worse if they make the conference final. Could get better if they lose some games from here. The Elite Prospects Consolidated Draft Rankings has Sarnia Sting centerman Alessandro Diorio as the number 27. I see the Elite Prospects 32 has JP Hurlburt, who's a forward doing great things with the Kamloops Blazers, right in and around number 27. You tell me how much quality should be available to them at number 27. We're here. It's a good draft. Spell that out to me.
Yeah, it's a pretty good draft. The top is definitely, it's pretty exciting, which is where that main pick is going to be coming from. I'm going to go ahead and say that I don't think it's going to be in the 27 range. They're coming up against Colorado and Dallas. Like it's going to be difficult for them to really push into that Western Conference final. So I think Canucks fans can certainly hope that it's going to be, closer to 20. And then as you inch into that kind of 22, 20, 18 range, now you're getting a little more excited about the talent there. Now you're looking at guys like Vigo Bjork, Ryan Rubrick, and Nikita Klepov, these more talented offensive players, where a guy like Rubrick is like super talented offensively and a big body, but lacks a little of the jam and the engine. If you do want to talk about guys in that, pushing into that late first, JP Hurlburt is dominating the West this year after making the jump from the USHL, the program last year. Doesn't maybe have the most translatable game, but boy, oh boy, he knows how to play offense for sure. A guy like Caleb Maholter, whose stock is really rising. Probably, early on in the season, it was likely he was going to be there. At this point now, he's probably as a center in a center light draft, he's probably gone. But another kid out of the West, Liam Ruck. You're hoping to get a guy who's going to be able to play in your top 9 if you're picking there, or maybe maybe a 4 or 5 defenseman if you're lucky. But yeah, you're certainly hoping that it's inching closer to 20. And then Adam Novotny's going to be hanging around. Daxon Rudolph maybe. Ryan Lynn, the shine is starting to come off him a little bit, at least in public perceptions. Like, is there a world that he slides into the late teens? I think it's possible. And then that's a home run for me. So ideally the Canucks would, number one, hold on to that pick, and Minnesota would get bounced in the first. And maybe they could get themselves another first rounder and like a Sherwood deal or something like that. And you can, now all of a sudden the cupboards can be replenished pretty quickly, right? You've got Vilander and Buium, 2 20-year-old defensemen that are looking like they're going to be big-time players for you in the top 4 for a long time. Lekkerimaki and Ugrin, right? You've got Braden Coots coming, and then if you could add 3 first-rounders, all of a sudden you've got assets. Now you've got things to get excited about.
Braden Coots, how's he doing at World Junior Camp?
Yeah, I'm sadly I'm not there, obviously, but I've heard good things. I think he's getting another spin on the second line, this time on the wing today at camp. They're like I said, they're going to be trying these kids in all different positions because they have so many centers. So Caleb Desnoyers was on the wing, now Coots is on the wing. They're going to try to see which of these guys can be the Swiss Army knife for us. That if we need, can come up from that 13th or 14th forward spot and really help out in different situations. And that's where I think Coots' game is perfect for. I was talking to an NHL scout yesterday, and, I'd shared that, I think that Coots and Desnoyers and Carter Bear are kind of the bubble guys to make that roster. And he was like, Coots shouldn't be a bubble guy. Like, he should be in the top 12. And I was like,
great.
He'd probably be on my top 12, but at the very least, he'd be my 13th forward, where you can jump him up. He could be your third line center. Jump him up. He can be your second line winger. Like, he can play all those roles, and he's a leader, defensively responsible, has good offense. Put him on my team all day.
When are they? I know it's not a selection camp, but when are they selecting the final team here?
So I was told that they were going to wait until December 22nd to see if they get any NHLers back, any more NHLers back. And so they'll have to have their 24 roster set by then anyway. So we've got, what is that, about a little less than a week. I did promote some optimism there that they might be able to get another NHLer back there, probably Sam Dickinson.
Gonna ask
a little bit of cold water has been poured on that from a couple of sources, but nothing is for sure at this point yet too. So you hope that San Jose does lend him out, but if they don't, it's good news for a kid like Keaton Verhoff.
Lastly, Max Sasson has a new 2-year deal, $1 million per year. He's playing center for the Vancouver Canucks, and he's an NHL regular, I think, at this point, right? Tell me what you thought of his season and what you think of the extension.
I mean, it's good for him, and I saw he was Danny Milstein and him were out for dinner and drinks there, celebrating it, and I mean it's a great story, and it's one of those ones where it's like you don't always have to be a first round pick. You don't always have to be the guy that's making all the international teams and all the way up. Is that sometimes you can take the long, hard road and you can still make it. And so I've been cheering for that guy for a while. And I think that he's earned every inch that he's got out of this too. And so to get a multi-year deal, a one-way deal, making $1 million a year, it's like, I take my hat off to him. I'm happy for him.
Awesome stuff, Cam. You've made us smarter again this week, and you got a chance to work with your BFF here.
Yeah, lovely.
Until next week, buddy.
Great stuff. Thanks, boys.